Hey y'all, it's Heather Hogan. This is Promises Through the Pain. It is a rainy day here today in Greenville, North Carolina. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a special assignment. So, about the end of January, Whit came home from work. It was on a Thursday, I think, and it was just a really peculiar day. Usually, days for me, I wake up and I almost always have a headache and I'm nauseous and I don't feel well. I get the kids together, I take them to school, and I have to pick them up. But that particular day, I was actually feeling really, really good. I didn't have any pain whatsoever. I didn't have a headache. I wasn't nauseous. And so I was able to get a shower, get dressed like I am today, looking a little bit normal. And he came home and he was like, well, what do you want to do for dinner? I'm like, well, why don't we go out to eat? Because we haven't done that in a while. And so we decided to go to Altavella. It's a local small business restaurant here in Greenville. Amazing food. So if you're ever in Greenville, if you've never been here before, it's right off of Red Banks Road. You will not be dissatisfied with anything that they serve. Anyways, so we walk in and the place was packed. It was probably 7:30, maybe 7:30 when we did this. And they said it would be about a 30-minute wait. Now, typically when I go into a restaurant, I do not like sitting at the bar. For whatever reason, I don't like it. But that particular night, there was only two spots left, one on one end and one on the other, and we just so happened to go to the other end of the bar and sit. And there was an old couple sitting next to us at the very end, and then two women sitting to the left of us. And the older couple, they were getting ready to leave. So I took a seat, and then once they left, Whit took a seat. So we're just sitting there. We're like, well, we might as well eat dinner here, which I would never do. I really would never do that. It's just something over the past couple of years that I don't enjoy doing. I have nothing against it for anybody else. It's just a personal preference of mine. Whit happens to look over to the left of me, and the woman that was sitting next to us happened to be his aunt. It's through marriage, not a blood relative, but it was through marriage. And he recognized her, and she is in her late 70s, maybe. And she was there with her friend. And so he said hello to her, and she didn't really remember him, but as he was talking, she kind of remembered certain stories and certain past experiences that they shared together. So we were sitting there, we were talking, and the place started getting, people started leaving. And it was about maybe 9 o'clock at this time. And even the bartenders were like, well, this is really weird for a Thursday evening that it's so dead in here. And literally on both sides, the bar side and the restaurant side, there was like one person on the bar side and nobody on the restaurant side. And we were getting ready to leave. And the woman, she was getting ready to leave too. And she whispered over to me. She was like, I have MS and it's really hard for me to move my leg. And her right leg, and as she got up, she couldn't use her leg at all, and she was bound and determined to walk on her own and drive home by herself. She ended up falling, and her leg wouldn't work, and she tripped up on the chair next to her, and she ended up falling on the ground. She hit her head. So of course immediately Whit ran over, and I ran over to her to try to get her sat up and make sure she was okay, make sure her head wasn't bleeding. The bartenders came over and they helped her. So it was in that moment where we had to decide what we were going to do. And as we were helping her, the Lord spoke to me and said, you and Whit need to take her home. And bartenders knew her. They were familiar with her, and thankfully she lived right down the road. the interesting part about the story, after, we got her home and inside of her house and we got her set in her seat. I mean, honestly, to her, we were strangers. She hasn't seen Whit in years. She didn't know me from anybody. And, she had to put a lot of trust in us to make sure that we weren't going to hurt her or to take anything from her. But I really believe that, God set that whole day up just for that moment. While we were sitting at the bar earlier in the evening, we were just talking about her husband who had passed away. And for whatever reason, we were talking about, when we die and what happens when we die. And she looked over at Whit and she's like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And I'm going to get choked up because it's just remembering that night and everything that took place that was so unusual for me in a day-to-day basis. And to happen to pick that restaurant where she was going to be at. So Whit was talking to her about, going to heaven, and all you have to do is believe in your heart and accepting Jesus into your heart, that's where you're going to go once you do that. And so he had that talk with her. And the thing about that story is you just never know when you're going to be used by God to possibly plant the seed that they need to change their life forever. It may have not even been the next day. She may not even remembered anything the next day, but I believe that was sent up by divine appointment. So we're all giving assignments in our life, whether it's to help a stranger, help a friend who's in need, getting a job that you didn't think you were qualified for, heck, meeting your significant other. Mine and Whit's story is pretty significant, but that'll be for another day to talk about. But I just want to encourage you that as God moves you in your life and where you're supposed to be at a specific time, that could change your life or change somebody else's life forever. And don't think in those moments where they're not significant, they are. Because each one of us does have a special assignment in somebody else's life. God made each and every one of us very special, very unique. And we can't be afraid to be in uncomfortable moments just because it doesn't make us feel comfortable. We have to be willing to reach out to somebody and just talk to them and make them feel welcomed and loved, and talking about Jesus unashamedly. And even their salvation, you may never see them ever again, and you may be the only Jesus that they see. Of course, I'm not saying that we were all Jesus, but we have Jesus inside of us. So sharing that with one another is extremely important. And I don't mind getting emotional when I talk about certain things. It shows how real life is. So that is my story about a special assignment, and just be willing to open your heart and open your mind and be willing to step out and do something great. It may not seem great at the time, but I guarantee you that it will be great. When we got home that night, I just started crying unbelievably, because it's like, how in the world does that happen? Like, how does that happen from me waking up to feeling absolutely phenomenal the whole entire day to wanting to go out to eat, spending 3 hours at this restaurant, talking to a family member that you haven't seen in years, and then helping them get home because they're completely unable to do it on their own. But even more so, being able to talk about Jesus and knowing and telling them that it's going to be okay if you just are willing to open your heart up to this. So anyways, that is Special Assignment. I am Heather Hogan with Promises Through the Pain, and I hope that you'll join me next time. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.